Hey, what's up? GG Gray. GG Gray. GGG Ray is what I was really going to go with. I was also thinking of Giga Gray as a name for the show. Giga Gray. Or GGG Ray. I ended up settling on GG Gray against my better thoughts and wishes, but last time I recorded this podcast, I didn't even have a name for it. That's how in utero it was. You guys didn't listen. You don't understand. When you were listening to that podcast, it was so experimental and crazy because I didn't even have a name, dude. I was just at my mom's, like, hemming and hawing and huffing and puffing because I didn't have a name. The hurricane had blown away our internet, and our power was out here at the house. And so I was a man without a paddle, you know? It was true suffering for me. And so I recorded that podcast, and dude, the numbers have been insane. Hundreds of thousands of downloads. I'm a million. I'm officially a millionaire after one podcast. Why didn't anyone tell me this would be this easy? Like, I can see myself being the next Joe Rogan, but better, funnier, better, and more ripped, balder than Joe Rogan. You know, more Texan. That's me. I'm the next Joe Rogan. But more about video games and streaming. You're listening to GG Gray, a podcast about streaming video games to the internet. And you are the internet, you dear listener, and I love you. And I'm here, and we're recording this podcast. And dudes, girls, ladies, boys, even if you don't identify as any particular gender, we got so much to talk about today. We've got the Hufflepuffs. We've got roses, like the flowers. We got orchids and roses to talk about. I'm going to tell you guys about wool sweaters. Man, I'm so hyped up right now. Hang on, let me get my coffee. What am I doing without my coffee? Y'all listening to this? Hang on, I got this cup. Here we go. Here we go. This is about to be some ASMR. Oh, listen to that. Brown stuff. This is my big coffee. So, if you know, you know. I'm using my big mug today. It is merchandise. It's Giant Bomb merchandise. And it is huge. The world's greatest #1 podcast is what it says. Dude, this coffee cup is so big. Twitch.tv/middlegray is where you can see this cup. It is gigantic. Every time I use it, I show people the size of it. It's bigger than my head. It's bigger than my head. It's literally as big as my head. Oh, man. This podcast is going to be good. I got this good coffee, this gigantic mug. Wow. Could you ask for a better day than this? I'm not telling you what day it is. I'm going to leave it a mystery. Because when you're listening to this, it's either on Monday or after. And how crazy is that? You're listening to a day that is either Monday or after. That's insane to me. You could be listening on a Monday. That's the earliest possible day. A Tuesday, maybe a Wednesday. You could hear this on a Thursday. There might be a Friday that you're listening to this, or even a Saturday. There is even a day, Sunday, that you could listen to this podcast. So you're either listening to it on Monday or a day after. There's no other option. You're not listening to this on Blork Day. Blork Day doesn't live. I want to tell you guys about something I see on the internet quite a bit. So you know that big affiliate, and this is 100% sincere. I'm not talking about anyone I personally know. No one that I follow, no one that I know in any sort of capacity. I just see people that I don't know on Twitter occasionally or wherever. But it's that big affiliate or that recent partner, the smaller partner streamer, and they're in a weird spot because they're in a spot in which they can do streaming full time, but they still need to make a little more money because they're not it's not necessarily a struggle for them financially per se, but they need a little more to be comfortable. And so one of their methods of growing is to try to create these viral videos, and they create this really bad sketch comedy. It's not funny. it's overacted and it's horrible. And listen, I know because I've tried. Years ago, I gave my shot. I shot my shot at doing like bad video game centric sketch comedy, and mine was terrible. And I see other people doing it all the time, and I cringe for them. It's so bad. This is like page 1 in the Corny Streamer Handbook. Make a bad sketch. Everyone wants to be the next ProZD. All right? Everyone, you watched Sungwon before. He's hilarious. He like made his name making these viral sketch videos, and now he's like a professional voice actor, and it's fantastic. He's on Cartoon Network and anime and video games. It's great. And other people think that if they have a video to do the kind of numbers that his does, then they'll like cross that gap. They'll like pass over into the next phase of their streaming career and make like comfortable money through streaming. And maybe there's a person out there that has done that successfully. But more oftentimes than not, I just see these small streamers just doing their absolute best. And I'm not criticizing them for doing their best. I'm just saying this is a thing that I see, and it hurts me because they have like 3,000 followers, on Twitter or whatever. They may have like as many or more on Twitch, and like my heart hurts for them because they don't get the retweets. Their community sees it, and they probably get good feedback on it, but like it doesn't extend out past that. I don't know, man. It just makes me feel weird and like I said, it's like page 1 on the Corny Streamer's Handbook. You know what I mean? I'm going to write that book one day, the Corny Streamer's Handbook, and I'm going to write, it's just going to be nothing but like dumb shit that I see in streaming. Listen, if you don't get it twisted. I love streaming. I love to stream video games to Twitch. I said it on my first episode. If you didn't listen to it, you need to listen to it. I said it on my first episode. It is my favorite hobby. My favorite pastime is to play video games on the internet, on Twitch. But I'm a man with eyeballs and a man with a very critical heart and mind. And I see just so many bad practices, streamers being corn asses. And today's 12 actionable tips, that was a callback. If you listen to the first episode, you would understand. You feel me, James? Listen to me, James. I know you're out there listening to this shit right now. You need to stop what you're doing. James, you know what I'm talking about. With the other person, you need to quit. That's rude and inconsiderate, James. And this one goes out to Trina. Trina? Listen, you got to stop. That one the game that you're obsessed with, and you know what I'm talking about. The game, you're not playing anything else on Twitch. Maybe branch out a little bit, Trina? Making it in the streaming game it's not easy. It takes effort, it takes savvy, it takes doing something different. It's not as simple as just like, and listen, you've heard this a million times, I've heard it a million times. It's not just plug and play. Plug up your game console, click the button on the computer, and then go make $1 million. So I understand like streamers trying to find these other avenues. Bitch, this is an avenue. This right here. I told y'all in the first episode, I used to podcast. I got out of it for various reasons. And this was my way back in, to do a podcast about video games and streaming. And so this is an avenue. I'm not ignorant of that. And I'm not a hypocrite about it. In the same way that like a streamer's going to do a bad sketch thing, or I don't know, try to fucking play a video game with a celebrity or some dumb shit like that. This is a version of that for me. And so maybe someone else would look at this and be like, oh, that boy's a cringe ass or some shit. I don't know. I just know what I see, and this is my podcast, and I'm gonna tell the microphone what I want to tell the microphone. You feel me? Let's do some breathing exercises. All right, here we go. Everybody, I want you to get into a hips wide. Put your feet, one foot behind you, the other foot sideways and in front of you. I want you to make a T. That's because Tyler, that's my first name. T for Tyler. I want you to make a T with your feet and then breathe like this. Rapid fire. All right, you feel better? Good. Twitch.tv/middlegray. That is my Twitch handle. You can see me streaming there every day on weekdays between 1 p.m. Central Time and 5 p.m. Central Time. And then I take a 3-hour break. And then I come back at 8 and I stream for another 3 hours. And it's a different game. So my daytime stream is one game. My evening stream is another. And then on the weekends, I usually do like one long stream. Sometimes 2 shorter streams broken up depending on, things that I need to do or whatever. But I'm what they call a part-time streamer. I have a job, but I'm doing what I can to stream as much as possible while also remain sane and spend time with my family. But here's the thing. You can't question my hustle. You can't question this is like I'm trying to make it on Bandcamp as a bad like hardcore band or rapper or some shit kind of hustle. You can't question that shit. Whenever I'm working though, I usually have time to watch other streamers, but that's like the morning, anywhere between like 8 and 1 when I start. That's when I would usually watch other streamers, and I like watch YouTube or whatever. I have something going in the background while I work. But generally that's when I get a chance to watch streamers. But what that means is that for streamers who overlap with my streaming time or stream after me or whatever, I never get to watch them. And to be honest with you, that's most of the people that I know on Twitch. Very few of the people I know on Twitch stream in the time in which I can watch streaming. And so I feel bad, dude. Like I want to be there and I want to support my other streamer friends who stream in that time slot, but I can't. I have other obligations. I stream, I spend time with my family. I can't spend that time watching other streamers when I have an allotted time in my day to watch streamers, and I do. Between, like I said, about 8 a.m. to about 1 p.m., I'm either watching YouTube, listening to a podcast, whatever, watching some sort of thing on YouTube, or I'm watching Twitch. That's really it, and I'm doing my work to make my money. And so I do feel a tinge of like shame because I want to be there to help those other streamers who come by and they'll hang out in my chat and they'll watch me stream, but I just don't have that time. And so if that's you and you know me personally, I want to say I support you, and you know who you are. I want to say I support you. I want to do anything I can to help you. I wish that I had the chance to watch you more frequently, and I want to just apologize for not being able to. I mean this 100% earnestly. I'm not like, this isn't a joke. I really do. I have those people in my life, my streaming community, who are putting in the work. They're putting in the effort. And I can't be there in the way that I want to be. I just can't participate in their stream in a way that I would like to. And I'm not ignorant of that. I know that, I don't know. I know that they probably see that and recognize that in the same way that I do. But I just want to kind of, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to say something about that because that has been something that I've thought about for a long time. And I just wanted to take, I don't know. I wanted to take a second to say that sincerely. I do a lot of stupid, kidding around and bits and all that dumb shit. But, I don't know, man. I have a gooey cinder. Anyway, so, man, what's been going on since last we spoke? Well, I got back in my house. On Wednesday, I was able to start streaming. So I got in Tuesday evening. The power came back on, and we had internet like within minutes, which was awesome because like my mom, their power came back on, and they didn't have internet for days. Which is why, yeah, again, I've said I whatever. So internet came back on, power came back Tuesday evening. We hung out. Caitlin and I just spent the night chilling. And then by Wednesday, we were getting back into a routine. I was able to start streaming. That Wednesday at 1, I started Metal Gear Solid 5, dude! I continued The Witcher 2, and I started playing Amnesia over the weekend because, it's Halloween, and I wanted to play something a little scary. But it's been a good week of streaming, man. It's been a really good week in streaming. Metal Gear Solid 5 has a pretty dedicated audience of people who seem very interested in the game. I like streaming these games that have been out for a few years, games that have like a ton of followers on Twitch, but don't have a huge like streaming, like a huge group of streamers there's less competition for those sorts of games. You know what I mean? Like when I streamed Doom Eternal, that's not a couple years old, but it is, it came out in March, and I played it here in October. And so just that amount of time reduced the competition between myself and other streamers so that I was able to pull like pretty good numbers playing Doom Eternal, and a similar degree Metal Gear Solid 5. Metal Gear Solid 5 is so good, bruh. I haven't played it since it came out in 2015. And even though it wasn't my game of the year that year, that's definitely The Witcher 3. Bitch, hands off. It was easy. Number 2? I'm trying to think what else came. I guess Undertale came out that year. That would have been in my top 3-ish or so. Oh, Bloodborne, though, dude. It's between Bloodborne and Metal Gear Solid 5 for number 2, I think. And then Undertale, it's probably... 2015 was probably Witcher, Bloodborne, Metal Gear Solid 5, and then Undertale, I think. Undertale, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Undertale and Metal Gear Solid 5 are probably duking it out for that number 3 slot. Anyway, Metal Gear Solid 5 is really good. In another year, like a less competitive year, like 2016, I would say, literally the next year, 2018, and 2019 were both really, really good years in games. If it were this year, how about that? Because this year has been much less competitive. Hades is the only one that's been like an easy front runner for Game of the Year. But like 2017, 2018, and 2019 had games, 2 or 3 games where I played it and I was immediately like, oh, this is Game of the Year, easy. And then it was that was Game of the Year until the next game came out that was like, oh motherfucker, now this is Game of the Year. In 2019, it was Outer Wilds. I played that thing in June, I think, when it came out, and I immediately Game of the Year, easy. Don't ask me another question. And then I played Disco Elysium, and I was like, it was even better. Fire Emblem Three Houses in there somewhere as a really good game too. But 2018 had, God of War, Spider-Man, but that Red Dead Redemption 2. So I'm just saying, in another year, Metal Gear Solid 5 wouldn't necessarily be like my number 1, except for maybe 2016, because that was a weak-ass year. Uncharted 4 can suck my taint, dude! Uncharted is one. This is a rant that I'm going to go on at some point in the future. One of the most overrated video game franchise in history, Uncharted. Uninteresting, uninspired characters, boring combat. The only thing that truly, truly sets the bar with Uncharted is the character animations and like just they're gorgeous games. And I don't want to go any further than that. If you want a good story, Uncharted is like C tier. All right. If you want a good story, Disco Elysium. If you want a good story, The Witcher. If you want a good story, Red Dead Redemption 2. Those games have stories that beat the dick straight out of Uncharted. That is legit. Uncharted as a franchise is like a 6.5. Anyway, 2016, if Metal Gear Solid 5 had come out in that year, that would have probably been my game of the year. It was at the time Uncharted, no, it was not. It was at the time Overwatch, but I think if I were like to go back, listen here, Tyler, Metal Gear Solid 5 did not come out in 2016. My game of the year in 2016 was and is still Overwatch because I played that obsessively for a couple years. But if it had, that's how good that game is. All right, are you listening to me? Are you tracking with me? I know. Listen, I'm a complicated man and individual. Metal Gear Solid 5 is so good. I'm going to list off to you the things that make that game good. 1, quiet is hot. That's it. No, that game is, in all sincerity, maybe the most impressive stealth action game that's ever been. All right? If you've ever been by my stream or you're a part of my community, you know how much I love Dishonored, how much I love Arcane, and I bring that up anytime I talk about stealth action. I bring up Dishonored and Arcane Studios because I think Dishonored 1 and 2, specifically 2, is the uncrowned king, I guess is what I'm trying to say, for stealth action. I think stealth, when it's best, is done as the immersive sim sort of style, which is to say you have a lot of abilities, you have a huge toolkit, you have a world that operates on a clockwork style system. So like guards have patterns, and there are NPCs in the game that have patterns, and when you get in there as the sand and the cogs of the machine, you can disrupt it and you can change it and you can alter the way the machine works. The machine being the game, you being the grain of sand. That's kind of what an immersive sim is for me. I'm not going to get into the history of that because you guys you won't respect it. No, it's just there's too much to say. But I think immersive sims work best as a genre when they are stealth games, because those stealth is a sort of genre that allows you to slip into that machine and really tinker with it from the inside, and then watch it change, watch it blossom out and explode and do different things. That's why when people talked about Breath of the Wild when it came out, people referenced like immersive simulation because it had different systems that would kind of interact with each other. The thing I always talk about is the being able to create the circuit and some of those shrines out of different shields and swords and stuff, and the game recognizing that those metal shields and swords are conductors for electricity, and so you can use, instead of using like the ball and the box that are made of metal to complete the circuit and open the door or whatever in any of those shrines, you could do that. But if you think outside the box and you think creatively, you could say, hey, I've got 19 big ass swords here, claymores. I'm just going to line them up one by one and complete the circuit that way. Fuck your box, Mr. Shrine. I'm going to use my swords. That's kind of what immersive simulation is in a nutshell. It is thinking and acting creatively within the space and within the rule set that the game gives you. And Dishonored is a series that really, I think, for this like current sort of milieu of game design, game development, is a series that does it maybe the best or close to the best, because they give you so many good skills. I think about like Emily and all of her abilities, in Death of the Outsider, being able to take the faces off of people and how that kind of can change the game that you're interacting with. Just the way that, like, I don't know, you interact with the system and the system changes according to your interactions with it. You know, there is so much, it's dynamic. It's so much of the game is non-scripted. There is a script, but you get to change the script is what I mean to say. Most games, you don't change the script. You have to operate within the confines of the script. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game that I absolutely adore. A top 5 game of all time because of the story, the characters, the world, the role-playing that you get to do within the world. But within the missions themselves, you are railroaded. You have to operate within between the two trenches of their design. There is no creativity there, not really. You have to, when they give you the sniper rifle, you have to go to the building that has 3 fucking waist-high walls. You can crouch down behind the waist-high walls and you can shoot people from there. But you can't go to a different building on the other side of the street and get out your shotgun and blast them that way. You have to operate within the games. The game says, hey, do this, and you must do that. Dishonored and Metal Gear Solid 5 and other games like it, Breath of the Wild, Prey, just other games that kind of have that immersive simulation flavor, they give you tools, and the trenches for their rule set in any given mission are really wide apart. They are so spread out. And so you have this huge space to play in with all this different freedom and all different ways to interact with the game systems. And I think Metal Gear Solid 5 and Dishonored 2 are probably the two most impressive and successful stealth action games of this generation of all time. All right? I love Splinter Cell. I was an OG Splinter Cell kid. I had an Xbox growing up. I played the first one before there was ever a Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow or ever a Chaos Theory. I was on all 3 of those. I loved Splinter Cell growing up. And Metal Gear Solid 5 is the perfection of games like Dishonored with immersive simulation and games like Splinter Cell that take mechanics like light and sound and physical embodiment, placement in the world, and make the game react to those things. You have to be quiet. You have to have the right clothing on. If you're laying in sand and you don't have the sandy colored clothing, you have some green shit on, the guards are going to see you easier. If you're laying in a bush and you have some sandy colored clothing on, the guards are going to see you easier. If you're hiding in a shadow and you're wearing some bright clothing, the guards are going to see you easier. And to a certain measure, that's how Splinter Cell was. Splinter Cell's stealth was purely 100% based on the way that you move through shadowy environments, right? Like you have to get in the shadows and move between shadow to shadow, move between cover to cover, and also avoid the gravel, avoid the broken glass on the ground. And you have all these different tools. You have a silenced pistol, you have night vision, you have heat vision, you have the little BlackBerry Palm Pilot thing with the little snake camera to see who's on the other side of the door. And when you knock out the guard, you choke him out, you have to take him and put him in a dumpster. Like, it gave you those tools, all tools that you use in Metal Gear Solid 5. And I understand, listen, Metal Gear had been doing that sort of thing for a long time too with the original one. But I'm saying that they took Konami, Kojima, that whole team, they took the best things about the original Metal Gear Solid formula, the Splinter Cell formula, and the Dishonored formula. And what I mean when I bring Dishonored into this, I'm talking about the clockwork sort of universe that you operate within. So like you get in the world and you have to go take down this base or whatever, and there are 15, 20, 30, 40 guards, all who have their own path, all who interact with you in not different necessarily, because they have archetypes or whatever, but they all interact with you in fairly unique ways based on the way that you interact with them. So if you use smoke, if you use I don't know, if you're going in loud, if you Fulton someone and they see that can change their path in a certain way because they can diverge off of it. That's a very Dishonored thing to do. In Dishonored, you get into a level and there are, 40, 50 NPCs, all who have their own path. And when you interact with one NPC, that can change the path of another NPC, and it's this domino effect. That is a huge thing that immersive simulation has been doing. Ultima and Deus Ex and Thief, like that's a thing that immersive simulation had kind of established in their games. And Dishonored, I think, perfected it, specifically Dishonored 2, and Metal Gear Solid 5 really borrowed from it. Now listen, Dishonored 2 came after Metal Gear Solid 5. I recognize that. I'm not saying that they took things from Dishonored 2. I'm saying that they borrowed ideas from immersive simulation that Dishonored 2, even though it came after Metal Gear Solid 5, perfected, if that makes sense. So all this to say, MGS5 is like just this like... It is this like stew of all these different game design philosophies, open world design, immersive simulation, stealth action. It is a beautiful, engaging system to really get in there with and play with. There is no other game in the Metal Gear Solid franchise that can compare to the enjoyment of interacting with the mechanics of MGS5. I think something like Metal Gear Rising is a fun one to talk about because it's a character action game made by Platinum, and so it has it's fun to just engage with that game in a different way. But like, I don't think that Metal Gear Solid 5 is the kind of... That's like my perfect game mechanically, not story-wise. We'll talk about that in a second. But mechanically, stealth action, immersive sims, all these other tools, customization. I want to go in with this sortie. I want to wear this outfit. I'm going to take this guy. I want D-Dog. I want the D-Dog to have the fucking vest or whatever. I'm going to take a truck. Like, that is for me, Middle Gray... Twitch.tv/middlegray. For me, that is the pinnacle of mechanics, of interacting with the video game system. I love that more than just about anything else. More than I love Dark Souls. More than I love first person Doom Eternal. More than I love even like a game like Hades. Like that... Metal Gear Solid 5 offers video game mechanical sort of perfection. For me personally. Not for anyone else necessarily. I'm just talking about my proclivities, right? Now, if I say that, if I say that it is like the pinnacle of game design achievement for me, and I would also lump in a game like Breath of the Wild in a similar conversation with Metal Gear Solid 5, why is it still that I love Witcher and Resident Evil 2, well, not Resident Evil 2, although I do adore that game too, Red Dead Redemption 2, Disco Elysium? Why is it that I love those games more than I love Dishonored, Metal Gear Solid 5, and probably Breath of the Wild? I think because as much as I love the intellectual and academic achievement of game design and capitalizing on mechanics in games like Breath of the Wild, Metal Gear Solid 5, Dishonored 2, blah, 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 I love connecting with the game on a more like soul level, character to character, like the universe in which they operate. That matters more to me as a person who plays video games than just interacting with systems. And that is merely a personal thing. But Listen, get a man who can do both. I love both styles of play 100%. I played Resident Evil, my God, I keep saying it. I played Red Dead Redemption 2 this year for the second time on stream, and I adored it. And I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 5 again this year on stream, and I am currently adoring it for monumentally different reasons. Not even, like, the reasons couldn't be further away. The story of Metal Gear Solid 5 sucks ass. It is nonsense trash. And I've watched the YouTube explainer videos or whatever. It is just this garbled goop of ideas that aren't delivered. If you're writing a story and you have good ideas, which Kojima and the writers of those games, they have good ideas, but you can't deliver the story in a way that makes sense and is impactful and meaningful, then it's bullshit. It doesn't matter. If your delivery mechanism is a baseball bat, then it doesn't matter how good the story is. You know what I'm saying? Storytelling is as much a good idea as storytelling is as good as its content and it's the delivery system for the content. Games like Witcher, Red Dead Redemption 2, Disco Elysium, they had great content and they delivered that content to you. And they did it successfully. Metal Gear Solid 5 did it. But also, I wanted to add as a caveat, that game came out... Sorry, I got some nose stuff going on this morning. You want to hear it? That game came out and it wasn't finished. Right? Like, the second half of the game has you replaying missions that you've already beaten because they did not have the end of the game in there in the way that it was supposed to be in there. Now, listen, there's a big twist at the end of the game that I really enjoy. I enjoyed it at the time. I'm sure I'll enjoy it whenever I see it again. But that's not the story. The story isn't just the plot A to B to C. The story is the characters that you interact with. It is the backstory. It is the lore. It is the way that they tell the story. And the bullshit thing that Konami does in their like cutscenes and dialogue is they do this really like Michael Bay shaky cam lens flare garbage that makes me think I'm watching a Transformers movie. And it's so stupid. Like, it's hilarious. It is so fucking dumb. If you watch me play this game, I'm constantly laughing and just talking about how dumb this game is because it's so stupid. The story is just absolutely silly. And like, again, I want to give credit where credit is due. They have good ideas. They have interesting themes and things, spaces they're working within as far as story goes. But man, they just do not have a meaningful delivery system for it. Anyway, man, I've been ranting about this game for a long time. Metal Gear Solid 5 is truly a great game. It truly, truly is. And I'm having the best time playing it right now. I've also been continuing The Witcher 2. The game is it remains fun. It remains interesting and engaging. I feel like I see where the story is going with, Henselt and Deathmold and Letho and that whole cadre. I ended up siding with Vernon instead of Yorvith. What was my reasoning ultimately? Oh, my reasoning ultimately was, it seems like in The Witcher 3, that's kind of the path that they rely on more, and they'll give, they'll do like a hand wave sort of acceptance that if you're carrying over your save from Witcher 2, that you sided with Yorvith, but ultimately you're interacting with Vernon in The Witcher 3, and so it feels like the game wanted you, in retrospect, to have chosen Vernon in The Witcher 2, which is an interesting thing because it seems like whenever you get to that decision between Yorvith and Vernon at the end of Act 1, it seems like Yorvith is more, hey, we got to do this stuff, and I'm going to help you find Triss. And Vernon is more like, hey, we're going to do this stuff, and you need to find the Kingslayer, and Triss is more of an afterthought, which ultimately, I haven't beaten this game, but I know you saved Triss because I know I've played The Witcher 3. But it does seem like their priorities between Yorvith and Vernon they're slightly different. Yorvith is more, I'll help you with Triss, and Vernon is more, hey, we can get Triss, but I really need you to find the Kingslayer and figure out this whole conspiracy thing that we're caught up in. So ultimately, I chose Vernon. I chose Vernon because it did feel truer to what I ultimately know The Witcher 3 to be. And it's good. It's really good. Like, I'm embroiled in a conspiracy with fucking square Chuck E. Cheese tokens and shit. And sorceresses raining fire from the sky and people melting in their armor and their wraiths, and there's just a whole mess that I'm kind of embroiled in right now in that game, and it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying where the story is going, and also I'm starting to really like the combat. Like I know on the first one I was kind of like, well, it's fine. It's whatever. It is what it is. This episode, I want to update that and say that I've gotten to where I really enjoy it. I've started to invest more skill points in Ard, which is like his force push or whatever. And that thing is really powerful. Like whenever I fought a certain boss, I don't want to say it here yet. Whenever I fought a certain boss who's very difficult at the end of Act 1, a big meaty fellow, I was really struggling. I was using more Igni because that's kind of what I used at the beginning of the game was Igni, primarily because that's what I used in The Witcher 1. That was my sign that I leaned on the most in combat. But I started focusing on Ard. I was like, I need to change my tactics. Let me try Ard. And Ard is really good because they stumble like crazy. You hit someone with Ard and they're like, it's like the old cartoons where they're like slipping on a banana peel or whatever. Or like when Shaggy and Scooby are trying to run, but they're stuck and they're like, that's what happens when you hit someone with Ard, And like you can get in there and start wailing on them. Like just X, 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 Y. And you do a ton of damage while they're stumbling around with Ard. So I've started investing in Ard, and I've started investing more points in my Vigor so that I can use Ard more frequently in combat. And like some battles are still pretty difficult, particularly when you get overrun with enemies. So like if you're fighting like 6-7 enemies at one time, that can get kind of tricky. But when you upgrade Ard to a certain level, it does splash damage. So you can hit him with Ard from a distance, and whenever it makes contact with the opponent, it'll explode and hit like 3 or 4 people around him. So you can do that and then jump in there and slice a few guys up at the same time. That still doesn't make it easy necessarily, but it helps you mitigate the flow of combat. And I'm really starting to enjoy it. Like, I was doing some exploration, and I came across a golem who was really imposing, and he killed me. And I was like, all right, I need to be guerrilla warfare style, cat and mouse. I'm going to, like, stay at distance. He's going to charge me. I'm going to dodge out the way. I'm going to hit him with Ard, stumble him, and murk him in the ass a few times. And that did, like, on my second try, I absolutely slaughtered him. So, like, it's a system that rewards patience and rewards experimentation, in a weird way. Like, I think The Witcher 2's combat is kind of underrated because people talk about that game and they're like, oh, the combat, whoa, the combat. And I don't think it's as much of the combat as it is the scenarios in which they make you fight are often kind of difficult. Like, there was one combat encounter that I was in. I can't remember who it was specifically, but there wasn't enough room to utilize your dodge effectively, your dodge roll or whatever. So like I would dodge out of the way, but I wouldn't get the distance that I remember what it was. I'm not going to reveal it because it's in the middle of the whole conspiracy quest line, and it's a big spoiler. But there's this one fight where you have to fight like 6 dudes at once. And like the room is really small, and there's like these prison cells, and there are these pillars, and there's just not enough room in that space to like create distance between you and the opponent. And whenever it's 1 versus 6, you need distance. You got to get that space. You know what I'm saying? Like especially when you're the guy who can do long range damage with Igni or Ard or whatever sign you're using, you got to create space between you and your opponent. But like that room wasn't very conducive for that, so it was really tricky. There was a lot of like cheese rolling, like just rolling around people, trying to get away and trying to like create that space so I could let Ard refresh and blast him and get another few hits in. But other than that, like I think the combat's pretty good. I feel like if they had just spent more time and resources, and I'm not saying that they needed to do this necessarily, but I think that a lot of the complaints people have about the combat would have been assuaged to some degree if those combat environments, those arenas, were just better. Like they were spaced better, organized better. There weren't as many areas to run into walls or whatever. So The Witcher 2 is really good. I like kind of like what I said last week about The Witcher 1. If you're a Witcher super fan, The Witcher 2 is easier to go back to definitely than The Witcher 1. And it's more similar, more akin to the style of play that you have in The Witcher 3. It's definitely worth playing. Definitely worth playing. I'm about, if I had to guess, maybe halfway through Act 2. ish, and I think there are only 3 acts. I think is something I saw someone say online. I'm not 100% sure about that. I've been trying to avoid any sort of spoiler whatsoever. But when I was looking some stuff up about the game, I think I saw at one point that there was that there are 3 acts. So I'm getting toward the end of that game, and I think I'm gonna do the Evil Within 2 once I finish with The Witcher 2, because I plan to beat it within the week, Witcher. And the Evil Within 2, I started a new playthrough on stream last year. I didn't finish then. I'm just going to pick that up. I'm not going to start a new save because I want to beat Evil within the month. Evil within the month. Evil within the month. Come on down. Get your Evil within the month. Sales now. I want to beat it within the month. And so I'm just going to pick up from the last save and we'll just go from there. And I'm excited because that's a good game. But let that be a segue into my last game to talk about. Amnesia, dude. That game is really cool. That is a really good game, dude. Let me just say this. A lot of horror game fans are patronizing, annoying, not fun to be around. Now, this isn't directed to anyone in my community. I want to be clear. This is directed to the randoms who came by the stream and just felt the need to help. And I feel like that is like weirdly tied to horror games and of course Soulsborne games, but everyone knows that. And like a couple of occasions I would have people come by chat and I'm like, I don't want or need your help. Leave me alone. I'm going to figure this out. So please don't be that audience member. Don't feel like you need to help the streamer. If the streamer asks, if they want some advice, by all means, but don't just go in there and don't make them feel pressured to figure it out quicker. They're playing as quickly as they can. They're doing their best. Leave them the fuck alone. What are you doing? Maybe you should go outside and go for a swim. Maybe you should go outside and go for a run. If you're really that antsy, like, I gotta help him. I can't stand to see it any longer. Go get that energy out elsewhere. Don't start typing on your keyboard, you lonely weirdo. All right? That's my message to anyone who feels an uncontrollable need to direct the streamer and what they're doing. But other than that, which isn't the game's fault, that game is really cool. It came out in 2010, so it's old. 10 years old now. And it's an adventure game. All right, it's an adventure game in the same way that like an old point and click, except it's in a 3D space and you're trying to solve puzzles and there's like, there are enemies to run away from in the sort of Alien Isolation way. There's no combat. Alien Isolation, you didn't fight the alien. You just had to run away from it, right? It's kind of like that. Like there are enemies. Ain't no fighting that enemy. You can throw a chair at it. You can throw a box. You can throw a piece of moldy bread. But you're not going to get in there and actually like start, boxing it up MMA style. There's no Bruce Buffer trying to get you to fucking fight. So you just have to run away from him, hide in a dark corner, and you have to balance these systems of darkness and sanity and stuff. And if you stay in the darkness too long, you'll go insane. And if you go insane, then I guess you could die. I'm playing on normal. I know. On hard, it's really demanding as far as like what you can and cannot do in the darkness and how long it'll take for the sanity or for your insanity to take over or whatever. But it's a really cool game, man. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's super creepy, like really interesting well, I don't know. I was about to say interesting creatures. There really isn't a whole lot in the way of creatures, I would say, but the environments are sufficiently scary. I ended up getting the collection on Steam, so I have Machine for Pigs, and I can play that. And I know that there's some there's some mixed feelings online. Some people really like Machine for Pigs. Some people don't really like Machine for Pigs. But regardless, I also have Soma, which is made by the original developers of Amnesia. And Machine for Pigs was made by a different developer. So I can play Amnesia, I can play Machine for Pigs, I can play Soma. And then they're coming out with the direct sequel from the original Amnesia, The Dark Descent. They're coming out with the sequel in just sometime this week. At the time of this recording, it's coming out this next week. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do after Amnesia, because right now I'm kind of doing 3 games. Like I'm doing, Witcher, Metal Gear. I did Amnesia over the weekend, and I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do next weekend, because I kind of want to continue this Amnesia weekend thing. So maybe I'll do Soma, maybe I'll do Machine for Pigs. But I'm not going to get the new one yet. I'm going to go through their other games, or the other games in that lineage of games before I get into the direct sequel. But all in all, it's a cool game. It's I can't imagine a person who is susceptible to being afraid of these games to be very afraid of this game. I'm not that guy. Like, I don't really get scared by games. There have been jump scares on my stream. I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to be all fucking, I've got ironclad nads or what. I do have ironclad nads, actually. That's something you should learn about me. No, I'm not trying to say I have like balls of steel. There have been jump scares. Amnesia hasn't done it for me yet. I think like the one real jump scare I ever really, there are a couple. One playing Alien Isolation where there's a big explosion, and one playing Blair Witch, which that game sucked, but it did jump scare me one time. But I can't imagine a person being scared by Amnesia. Now listen, Amnesia is not a jump scare game necessarily. It's not made for that kind of horror. It's more about the really, like, the dread of being in this, like, this woeful place, it's almost like the same kind of dread when you're playing Bloodborne the first time and you don't feel powerful enough, and that, like, the monsters, or especially when you get to like the Hypogean jail or whatever, those areas in, like, toward the middle and later part of the game where it's honestly scary and you haven't done it before. When you play Bloodborne second, third time, whatever, it no longer has that sort of like ambient fear about it. But Amnesia has that same kind of, like, just dreadful, like, I'm underpowered, I'm gonna die if I come across the wrong dude, I'm gonna get murked easily. And so really it's just about running away and trying to solve these puzzles while also avoiding the enemy. And it's fun, man. It's really good. I'm really enjoying it a whole lot. And so I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm doing one of those other games, Machine for Pigs or Soma, whichever one I decide on. It will be soon, and you guys will be able to tune in for that one as well. But Amnesia's really solid. I can't wait to finish it, and I will give you guys a real review. Well, before we get into the next segment of news, I don't know. I've been thinking about doing this. I want to do like maybe a song from a recent game I've been playing, or a song from a game that has been on my mind a lot lately. Just something from a soundtrack. Love video game music. I have a video game music podcast you can check out called The Bars Barter, and I'm gonna do some more cross promotion with that because I'm really proud of that podcast. But I think I'm gonna choose a song from Hylics 2, which is a video game that came out this year. And Hylics 2 is like a kind of throwback JRPG with a really interesting style, like visual style. Something you've never really seen before. I can't remember. How did I describe it? I streamed the whole thing, and I'll talk about that at Game of the Year because I fucking loved that game. Incredible soundtrack. The game was made by a person named Mason Lindroth, and the soundtrack was composed and performed by Chuck Salamone, or Salamone? I'm not 100% sure. Alimony? Did you get your alimony? And so I'm going to play the track Them's Fightin' Words. Them's Fightin' Words. This is the battle theme for the game, and it is just so rich. It's such a good, like, just kind of guitar music experimental stuff. I'm really into this soundtrack. I'm really into this song. And we're going to listen to this as we go into news. So check this out. I hope you play Hylics 2. It deserves more love. And we'll talk about it at the Game of the Year. Like I said, Game of the Year, it's going to be in the conversation. And I guarantee you it'll be on that list because it is a cool freaking game. Hylics 2, Hylics number 2. All right, check it out. So a couple little bits of news. Did y'all see this Streets of Kamurocho thing? Now listen, I know that the middle point of the Venn diagram for this gamer isn't huge, but I'm one of them. The fan of Streets of Rage and beat 'em ups, and the fan of Yakuza. There's literally a fan made. It's not made by Sega. It's made by an indie developer, but Sega is publishing it for free for people. You can go on Steam between like October 17th and 19th or 20th or something, and buy or acquire it for free. And it's a Streets of Rage style beat 'em up, but based in Kamurocho, and you can play as Kiryu and Majima, and I think Ichiban. I think that's a dude from Like a Dragon. I think he's an unlockable character or some shit. I don't know. And it's just a beat 'em up. It's a side scroller, pixel art beat 'em up. It seems to have great music. It's officially licensed and produced by Sega, developed by an indie studio who does like these, pixel art demakes of games, and it looks dope. I just downloaded it from Steam right before I started the podcast. It's like 34 megabytes or some shit, so it downloaded in half a second, and I think I'm gonna stream that at some point just because I love Yakuza, and Yakuza Like a Dragon is coming out in a matter of weeks, and I'm so excited about that. This is just, man, I'm Yakuza'd up right now. I go through, for the past 3 years, getting into Yakuza since Yakuza 0 came out in 2017, I go through Yakuza phases where I'm like, dude, I'm ready to play Yakuza 6. I want to play Yakuza Kiwami. I want to play Yakuza Kiwami 2. I want to play Yakuza 3. I got 4 and 5 I need to play. I'm there. I go through these windows, these little bursts of time where I'm just Yakuza'd up. And I'm starting to get into that phase, dude. I got this Streets of Kamurocho. I'm going to get that Like a Dragon when it comes out. I still got Yakuza 3 and 4 to go beat. No. 4 and 5. I've beaten 3. And those are the only 2 left that I haven't beaten with as far as the Kiryu saga goes. I've done 0, Kiwami 1, Kiwami 2, and 6. Which 6, I know, I did 6 out of order, but Kiwami 2 and 1 and 2 weren't out yet, and it was the only one available. So I played 6. Yeah, that Streets of Kamurocho, that's going to be one that I play over the next week. The only other thing I want to talk about, there are other little bits of news here and there, but honestly, not a whole lot has been going on. Like I said last week, the industry is still like groaning for the forthcoming console release, so there's just not much. But there are rumors of a Dreamcast Mini, which is cool, man. The Dreamcast was a good console. A lot of good games, a lot of bad games, to be fair. But a lot of good games. We could get Phantasy Star, we could get Soul Calibur, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Sambo de Amigo. I don't know. Maybe not that, but Space Channel 5. Like, there's some really good Sega games out there that could be on the Dreamcast. Whatever versions of Sonic people, reprobates would want. But, that's interesting. Has there been anything in the... I think the only... Okay, I have something I want to say that I think is funny. So are you ready for this? Has there been anything that has copied a trend more than these mini consoles? Like Nintendo did the NES Mini and the SNES Mini, and then you get the PlayStation 1 Mini, which sucked, and then you get the Sega Genesis Mini, which also sucked. And not because those consoles have bad games, they have awesome games. The Genesis and the PS1 both have amazing video games, but the hardware, the mini hardware they released was bullshit, and the emulation for those games was terrible. So, and they just straight up hawked, just absolutely stole the mini idea from Nintendo and did it themselves and did it way worse. Has there been anything more blatantly more blatant stealing than that? And I would say the only thing close is when Fortnite stole the Battle Royale concept from PlayerUnknown from PUBG. Anyway, that's the joke. Was it funny? I feel like I delivered it well. We'll workshop it. We'll do it another time. When you'll see me hosting SNL or something in the future, and I'll use that one. Oh, my babies. I think that's it. You hear me? I'm sitting down now. It's been a good podcast, I think. A lot of hollering, a lot of impassioned squeals, that kind of stuff. Listen, I threw down the gambit last week. If there are any Saudi oil barons, princes out there that want to advertise on my show, listen, $50 million and I'll get you like a 3-second ad. Hit me up.